Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Online, and today's video is going to be a post-commentary on some footage from a site from the hunt which I ran together with my brother. So that was actually pretty cool. For the first time in quite a bit actually, we went out and played some EVE Online together. I was of course in my Onyx, which is really powerful for these sites with the extreme resistances right on both kinetic and thermal, I think it is. You really don't have to worry at all about these sites. They can't get me below 80% of my shields at the moment. The missile damage is pretty good. I do have to switch out depending on the target, so I'm using the precision missiles for the frigates, or I am using the high damage missiles for the cruisers and the battleships that show up. So my brother ran this in a Stradios, which I think we'll see in a moment. It's definitely a pretty good ship for that as well. I think that the innate armor resistance are going to be a little bit easier to make really good for these specific rats. And of course it's drones with some small lasers, which is what he's using in order to be able to deal with the frigates a bit more easily. So I think the way my brother explained it was that if he goes all out with the drone damage, that's plenty against stuff like the cruisers and the battleships. So he likes to have some small lasers there, so he can be more effective on the small targets and doesn't have to switch out his drones too much. So this is pretty standard fare because I didn't feel like switching out the missiles too often. I told my brother to go after the cruisers mainly, and I would use my precision missiles to 3 or 4 shot the frigates, which I think is a pretty good result. It's really the one disadvantage of trying to find a ship that does exploration well, but is focused on the passive tank and the missiles pretty much only, which is what the Onyx does. You'll want to switch out your missiles depending on the targets that you're going after. And so here you can see it's definitely a lot of fun. And that is one thing, this hunt event so far, maybe giving you guys a little bit of a review on that. I feel like it's much more accessible than the previous one. After the first weekend, as always, things do quiet down and you've got an easier time finding and running these sites. Up until the first weekend, it was extremely busy, lots of competition, people in every single site that you can find. So I feel like it does pay off to just have a little bit of patience, let CCP iron out most of the bugs if they are happening, and just start running them in the second week or something like that. I think that's basically, if you don't worry too much about completing everything from the hunt, then I feel like that's definitely a valid strategy. Talking about bugs, of course, there has been, maybe still is, this bug where the battleship, the final battleship, spawns twice. I find this to be actually a pretty damn interesting one, and it might not be an accident because of all the problems with the patch. I do suspect that CCP might have done this in order to increase the loot deployment a little bit in the game, so that none of the items become all too rare, although of course people do run these on a massive scale already. Maybe CCP has some numbers that we don't know about, and they felt like because of the first few days of the patch, it would be a good idea to actually give people even more loot. What I liked about it is that this opened up what you're seeing right here, 2 people running these sites together, and I feel like that's a very interesting potential development here that might have been an entire accident, but I feel like this is very interesting. It is focus on the loot drops, but make them easily divisible by different numbers of players. So usually, of course, you want to run these sites by yourself, and whenever someone else comes in there, it becomes competition, and you're basically hoping that they'll leave the site and go look for their own site. But here now, this was absolutely perfect, of course, with 2 Rakat Tahiri battleships at the end of the site. What we could do was, well, decide, I'll take the first one, you take the next one, and even with complete strangers, you basically do feel like if they're coming early enough and they actually help you out with the rest of the rats, why not take that deal or take the chance on that deal as well, just so that you can both run that side a bit more quickly, you both have your loot, and then you go off and try to find the next one. So I feel like this is really interesting and perhaps an interesting way to spruce up the potential loot tables in order to incentivize people working together. So if you want sites that are usually run by 2 people, well, make it so that you've got 2 loot spawns so that people can easily divide that. If you want to go even higher, you know, you could have like 5 interesting targets in a single site and then decide to tune those types of event sites for 5 people. That could be really interesting in my book. And if someone then wants to invest and risk a far more expensive ship and a far more expensive fit in order to be able to run a site that is normally tuned for 2 or up to 5 people, and he can do it alone, well, then he earns himself that extra loot. It's an interesting scaling mechanic which I had not thought about before, and as we slowly head back for the tractor unit, there he is, Rakatahiri number 2, which is of course the target for my brother after I tractor the first set of loot there. I've been really lucky on the loot drops so far. I have several of those faction pieces, which I think will be amazing on a Gila or a rattlesnake, because it gives you damage bonus and rate of fire bonus to missiles, and it gives you that bonus for a drone damage as well. This is not one of the good ones, it's 7% on the missiles and 10% on the drones, but I've got several that gives me right there 10% on the missiles and 15% on drone damage bonus. Definitely tailored for the Gila, the rattlesnake, things like that. Something that I'll need to experiment on later on. But I'm having fun with the hunt here so far. I feel like this one is tuned a little bit better. You can definitely grind these out if you want to get all the points for the agency. I don't think I'll get to that point, but the hunter skins, I find there are some really cool ones amongst them, like the Raven, which I've got, and the Thanatos, which I've got, which does incentivize me to just, you know, keep going. I want to see if I can get a couple more skins in the next one, and with the double loot pinatas there, it's definitely very much possible. And I feel like this is maybe an unintentional bug, maybe something that CCP is actually keeping there just to get more loot on the market and not make things all too expensive. But this might be an accidental mechanic that could be used in the future to tune sites, to make harder sites more interesting for 2, 3, up to 5 people, 10 people if you really want to. You can scale that up as much as you want. And for my brother and myself, this has been really a great experience. You know, just set up the fleet. You can run this then basically in any ship that you want. You don't need the very best resistances or anything like that in order to get through the site. If you can get in there with 2, 3 people, and then, you know, you just say, I'll take the first one, you take the next one, let's have some fun and keep running these. So that's what I've been doing. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll see you all next time.